you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Unfortunately, my speakers aren't working so well on my computer, so I've got an external speaker. Hopefully, that will be okay. Okay. So, okay. So we are in Kriyat Shema. Let people join. I reset the Zoom. That's what Darren asked. Okay. You can hear me? Okay, now Darren's here. Okay, excellent. We're all good in the room. Okay. So we are Kriyat Shema part 2. I'll find you the exact page and I'll share screen. Just have the server here. Do you have the page number while I can read out for people? We finished Kavana. We finished the page 193. Does that sound right?
The problem is like
Page 193, Kriyat Shema part 2. Okay, that's what we're doing now. So I'll just share screen. So until now we spoke about Kavana. Now we're going to talk not about Kavana in Shema, but just about other aspects of behavior and composing one's citing Shema. Okay. The different parts of Shema and the Kavana, which is required at each. And now we're going to talk. Okay. Next week, unfortunately, there will not be a share. I'm not here, away. But so we'll reconvene there in 2 weeks, though. So next week we're out, I'm afraid. So let's see what we can. So, but you can in 2 weeks you can bring the whiskey Basim Haraba.
And I think in 2 weeks Louis should be back.
Yeah, in 2 weeks he will be, and okay, and then he's back on. He's like owes us 4 months of whiskey or something. No,
well,
Michael, no, he's been away for a while.
Okay, to make sure that he takes that responsibility seriously.
Okay, so let's talk here about what's required in terms of composure during Shema. We spoke about Kavana, so we know that the Torah tells us, right? You're supposed to recite Shema when you lie down or when you wake up. You hot?
Just a touch.
Is the remote there? If not, it's on the wall just outside this door. You'll see it on by the entrance. There's a remote. It's for here. The one for here. Thank you. Okay. So the Mishnah discusses, it's actually machloket in the beginning of brachot. What does it mean b'shach b'cha uvkumecha? Does it literally mean when you lie down and when you stand up that you have to lie down for Shema at night and stand up for Shema in the daytime? Or does it mean just turn it off? Chabot legamrei. So there. Infrared. Shakwa, thank you. It's infrared, yes. So, what does it mean? So, there's a machloket about this between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. That whereas Beit Shammai says b'shach of kumecha means when you Beit Shammai says literally that you lie down means b'shach b'cha, and kumecha means literally when you get up, you stand up. Whereas Beit Hillel understand it to mean Zman Shkiva and Zman Kima, the time for getting up and the time for lying down. Okay, so let's read the first source here on page 193. The Mishnah says Beit Shammai and Beit Shammai say be'erev at night Kol Adam Yatev Yikra, right? Everyone should literally lie down, should recline and read Shema. Okay, and then Uva Boker Ya'amod. In the morning, a person should actually stand. That's the opinion of Beit Shammai. It says in the pasuk, so Beit Shammai says that basically, literally, just lie down and stand up when you do Shema. Beit Hillel say no. Kol Adam korek darko. You're supposed to read in the normal manner. It says when you go on the way, i.e., in your normal way of conducting yourself. Imken, if so, asks the Mishnah. According to Beit Hillel, why do you say when you lie down and when you stand up? He answers, Adam doesn't return to the position that you're in, but rather the time of day. Means when you go at night, and kumecha means in the morning. And that's what the Beit Hillel rule. So Rabbi Tarfon wanted to do like Beit Shammai, and what happened to him? Let's see what the Gemara says. The Mishnah says, Amar Rabbi Tarfon, said Rabbi Tarfon, Ani hayiti baba derech, I was coming on the way. Vahatti likro kedivrei Beit Shammai. And I basically lay down, I reclined, in order to read Shema like Beit Shammai say that at night time, you're actually supposed to literally lie down. V'sakanti ba'atzmi mipnei halistim, and I basically endangered myself because of robbers, right, the bandits on the highway. Because he stopped to actually literally lie down. Amrulo, so the rabbi said to him, Kadai hayita lachuf ba'atzmacha, you deserved basically putting your life in danger. She'avarta al divrei Beit Hillel, because you went against the words of Beit Hillel. In other words, you were wrong by following Beit Shammai. You should have followed Beit Hillel, that it means the time of going to bed, not that you're literally supposed to lie down at night and stand up in the morning. Okay. 1 second. Was that a question? No? Okay. So let's read the next source though. Regarding this whole idea of lying down, we actually see that that might actually be a halachic issue with lying down once we rule like Beit Hillel, and not to lie down when we're reciting Shema. This is perhaps most nafka min al-ma'aseh is when, let's say, we've done early Ma'ariv, and one wants to say Shema, create Shema al-Hamita, and wants to do all 3 paragraphs at night. So can one be lying down? Right, anyway, in bed saying Kriyat Shema al-Hamita, maybe they can just do their 3 paragraphs then, or maybe that's an issue. So let's have a look at the Gemara here in Brachot in source 2. Brachot Yud Gimel Amud Bet, the Gemara says as follows. It says here, Amar Rav Yosef said, Rav Yosef, Prakdan, one who is lying down, Lo Yikra Kriyat Shema, should not recite Kriyat Shema when lying down. Now, lying down here, Prakdan means somebody who's lying down on their back. Says the Gemara, Mikrahu de lo likre. This implies the only prohibition here is that you're not supposed to lie down. Hamikna shapir dami. But you're actually allowed to, according to this, to sleep on one's back. Is that really the case? Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi layet amandagani parkid. The Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi literally cursed or basically rebuked somebody who lay on their back. It's considered not sanua. I'm not going into all the details now, but it's considered not sanua for one to be going to sleep on one's back. Yes. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. All right. Okay. Amri, they said, Migna, and one's allowed to lie down, Kimatzli Shapir Dami. So the Gemara answers that to sleep, one's allowed to sleep on one side, but it's not sanua to sleep on one's back. Mikra, one's not supposed to sleep on one's back. I'm not going to go into the details now. No. Okay. Mikra, but to read Shema, Afagav the mitzlei nami aser. So it's not considered sanua. I'm not going to go into details now, but it's not considered sanua to lie on one's back. See Rashi in the next paragraph for more. But you're allowed to lie on one side. One's not supposed to go to sleep lying on one's back, but one does on one side. Is okay. But for reading Shema, you're not even supposed to read Shema lying on your side. So Shema, you're not supposed to be lying down at all. It's zenami asur, as the Gemara says. That's also prohibited. Is that the halacha? Sorry? Yes. You're not supposed to lie down. We're going to get to the halacha. Don't worry. That's what Surah is all about. So V'ha Rabbi Yochanan Matzli Vakari. What about Rabbi Yochanan? Matzli Vakari, that he used to read Shema while lying down, basically. On his side, he would just turn his head to the side and recite Kriyat Shema, and you just said it's Asr. Shani Rabbi Yochanan de Baal Basar Hava. Right? How's it translate Baal Basar here? It's excellent. Baal Basar literally means he was a big guy. He was a heavy guy. So he was big, right? But how do you translate him? Because he was corpulent. Nice translation. But the answer is it was difficult for him to basically move, and therefore there was room for him to be lenient. But we learn here 2 halachot. We're not going to go to all the details. But one's not supposed to sleep on one's back for tzniut reasons. Those who want to look at Rashi in the next source. We're going to skip it. And otherwise, in general, though, one should not be lying down even on one side for Kriyat Shema. One can sleep on one side, obviously, but one should not be reciting Kriyat Shema lying down. Rabbi Yochanan was the exception. Rabbi Yochanan was the exception to that rule.
Rabbi Darren, yes. You're specifically talking about Kriyat Shema, not for all things, or is this just for Shema particularly?
That one should not be reading Shema even if one's on one side, correct? For Kriyat Shema.
No, but I'm saying this saying that you shouldn't be flat on your back or lying down.
I'll tell you. We'll talk after the recording's off. Sarah?
Okay, sure.
All right. Okay. Fine. Okay. But the Gemara Masechet Brachot talks about this in source 4 later on in Brachot and Kaf Daled, and talks about basically we've got to also remember the context of this. It talks about people who are sharing a bed and things like that, families who are sharing a bed, and people who are undressed and the like. Are you allowed to read Shema in front of one another under the same blanket? Now we're talking here about a culture where families would all live in like one room or something like that, or often share blankets, share beds, and that sort of thing. And that's what the Gemara in the next source discusses, which is also prevalent. But either way, what you see from this Gemara is that they were reading Shema lying down. And we just said you're not supposed to read Shema lying down because we rule like Beit Hillel against Beit Shammai. Okay, so let's look in source 4 about this. The Gemara brings a contradiction here, basically, between two brightot. So let's look in source 4. Meitivei was challenged. Two people who are lying down in one bed. Right, so we're talking here about it was common that people would share a bed, family members, siblings, whatever it is. They would turn they should turn away from each other and read Shema because they're not dressed. Tanya Achrite and the other brighter taught us Hayashen b'mita, somebody who's lying down in the bed, Uvanav uvnei v'nav b'tzido, and his family members are next to him in the same bed. Harezeh lo yikra kriyat Shema, ele imkein hayte talit mafseket benehem. Unless there's sheets in between them, they should not be reading kriyat Shema. There's this stira here, this contradiction between two brightot, which the Gemara in Brachot deals with. But either way, the common theme of both brightot is that they seem to be lying down whilst reciting Shema, and we had just said that that was a problem based on the earlier Gemara. So the Rabbeinu Yonah in source 5 to that Gemara in Brachot, in his commentary, the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yonah in source 5, he offers two explanations as to the difference between when you can lie down based on that Gemara versus earlier. Let's have a look in source 5 at Rabbeinu Yonah. So he gives two answers in source 5. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, the Ikad Amri, there are those that say, what about the first Gemara we saw, right? The first source had said what? That we're allowed to read, even if you're lying on your side or you tilt your head to the side, it's still usher to read Shema lying down. That's when all you do is you just turn your head to the side like a prakdan, like someone who's lying on their back. When he's lying basically on his front or on his back. All he's doing is just turning his head a little bit. That doesn't help for Hilchot Kriyat Shema. But if a person is lying completely on their side, then it's not considered a problem, and that would be allowed. So it's a bit of a weird halacha here, but Rabbeinu Yonah has said that when is it prohibited to read Shema, even when that's only if you just tilt your head. But if you turn your whole body on the side, then it's considered appropriate to read Shema in that manner, even though you're lying down. That's answer number 1 of Rabbeinu Yonah. But he gives a second answer here in the second paragraph in source 5, and he says, the correct answer is the kivan de chazinan teheicha de ikka tircha shari, that we saw in the Gemara that whenever there's a tircha, it's bother, it requires great effort, is permitted. Where did we see that in the Gemara? Rabbi Yochanan, right? Rabbi Yochanan was a big guy, and it was difficult, right? Could I'm reading the Rabbi Yochanan matzle v'kare. Like we saw Rabbi Yochanan would just tilt his head and read, mishum dehavi bal basa, right? Because he was a big guy. But havale tircha, and it was difficult for him to get up. So hachinami, so too, says Rabbeinu Yonah, hitiru lo b'hataya. Somebody who's already in bed and undressed, they allowed that person just to turn their head away and read Shema. Mishum dehavale tircha, because it would have been bothersome. Kivan shepashet begadav lachzor labshan. Right, since they already got undressed, for them to then get dressed again and get dressed again and read Shema, and therefore it's considered tircha and comparable to the case of Rabbi Yochanan in the Gemara. So Rabbeinu Yonah here, interestingly, gives two tirutzim, two explanations as to when it is that lying down is acceptable. Answer number 1, suggestion number 1 is what? That one has to be wholly on one side. One shouldn't be lying down in a non-salor position. One should be wholly on one side. And then it's okay, not just tilting the head. And answer number 2 is that it's all to do with tircha, how difficult it is. And it's things that they'd already got undressed and gone to bed. Then the b'diavad, they didn't make them get up. And again, they said they could just turn away from the family who were in the room with them.
Can I just ask you, when
Yes.
they talk about getting undressed and getting into bed,
Yes.
are they talking? I mean, I don't know, but did people sleep without clothes or partially undressed or did they have pajamas?
Yeah, implication is that they were not dressed. They just had when the Gemara says talit, it means the bed sheet. Yes,
Right,
or
so
like
they
a
were
or a
undressed.
blanket or something. But
And today, when not everybody,
Right.
but people wear pajamas, and some people wear pajamas.
then there's more room to deal. Today, if
Yes.
people wear pajamas,
Yeah.
then there's more room. But again, we'll talk about erva next year. What's considered erva in terms of reciting Kriyat Shema. We'll talk about that next.
Erva, because you might have somebody
Uncover
next to
somebody
you.
who's undressed, like next year, right? Okay. But and that's the next chapter. But here right now we're dealing with two issues. Number one is that they've got to be holy on the side. That's explanation number one. Although it's not so nowhere to be on one's back when reciting Shema. And number two is that it's just a question of tircha. It's a question of bother. So let's have a look. Then, what about a case where there's no tircha? It would imply, according to the second reason, that what? If there's no bother, just to easily recite Shema. For example, let's say someone's in pajamas, so they can just sit up and read Shema. The implication is they should sit up and read Shema. It's only tircha if somebody's already undressed, but if somebody's clothed or in pajamas, in a newer fashion, they can recite Shema, then they should be getting up. They shouldn't be relying on just lying to the side.
But that really doesn't.
That's what's implied according to the second answer of Rabbeinu Yonah.
Oh,
and we're going to see.
That doesn't help us with the first.
Right.
Answer.
So according to that's enough in between the two answers. According to the
Right.
first answer, it's enough
do
to
it
lie on one
anyway.
side. You
Right.
can anyway, even in pajamas, one could lie on one side.
Second
It's fine.
side is one of two.
But according to the second answer, you've got it's tircha. There is no tircha if one's already dressed. Just sit up, unless one's like a balbasa like Rabbi Yochanan. Then otherwise one just sits up. But this is actually brought in the Shulchan Aruch versus the Ramah. So let's see this in source 6. In Aruch Chaim here in source 6 in Hilchot Kriyat Shema. Kore otama halech omed, right? You're allowed to read Shema whilst walking or standing, or shochev, or lying down, says the Shulchan Aruch, or rochev al gabe behema, or yosher, even while riding an animal or sitting. Avolo prakdan, but not lying on one's back, lying flat. Dehainu shepanav tochot bakarka, i.e. face down, or mushlach al galbo, either face down or face up is not tzanua, upanav lamala with face up. Aval korev hu shochev al tzito. So the Shulchan Aruch rules like the first answer of Rabbeinu Yonah, the one is allowed to read Shema while lying on one side. And the Ramah, though, me'achar, since shekva shochev, he's already lying down, the ikatircha la'amod, and it would be bothersome for him to get up again. Now, as we said, that's true about somebody who's undressed, but somebody who the norm is to wear pajamas, that's maybe not the case, and therefore one would need to get up, at least to sit up to read Shema. He adds there, though, in the next halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, bet there, Misha rotzeh lahachmir la'amod kshu yoshev likrot ha'mu'umad nikra avaryan. This is based on the story of Rabbi Tarfon in the Gemara. Somebody wants to be machmir, to stand and read Shema in the morning, it's talking about. You want to stand, because it says like the pasuk, when you get up, if you want to be machmir and stand for Shema in the morning, you're called an avaryan, a sinner. Someone's done an aveira. Because the Gemara said, fundamentally, we paskin like Beit Hillel against Beit Shammai. It's good enough for the Gemara, should be good enough for you as well. And therefore, like that story with Rabbi Tarfon, he lay down at night time to recite Shema, even though it was dangerous. And they said, oh, you deserve to be in danger. The Gemara paskin like Beit Hillel, you don't lie down at night for Shema, you don't stand up, especially in the morning for Shema. The halacha is like Beit Hillel, not Beit Shammai, and therefore somebody who tries to be machmir for Beit Shammai is called an avaryan. That's what the Shulchan Aruch rules here based on that story in the Gemara. But as we said, the second answer in the Rabbeinu Yonah, though, about tircha, doesn't seem to apply today. And if there's no tircha, the Achronim brought in the Bir Halacha in source 7 say that one at least sit up for Shema and not say it lying down. So certainly for Ashkenazim, one should try and sit up if possible.
But the Ramah actually reintroduces this idea of tircha.
The Ramah is the one who brings tircha. So that's why I said Ashkenazim. So let's see in source 7 how the Bir Halacha expands it. And he says that, right.
So it's interesting, just the Haggadah, the Ramah.
The Ramah.
He doesn't, Rabbi Yochanan was a large man, we said, right?
Yes.
So it was difficult for him to move.
Yeah.
The Ramah doesn't indicate that. The Ramah simply says that ma'achar shekvar shochev, since you're lying, he's imagining that it's some degree of tircha for anybody to get up.
But he's almost quoting verbatim from the Rabbeinu Yonah, who had said what? The reason is because you're undressed. No, the second reason was tircha.
Oh, the
second reason, which is because of tircha, because the norm is a person's undressed, they have to get dressed, etc.
Okay.
And that's equivalent to Rabbi Yochanan. It doesn't mean just a big guy or somebody who has different issues with mobility, but just in general, any barrier which wouldn't apply. And let's look at how this is translated in the Bir Halacha. He takes it that way based on some of the Achronim. Let's see it inside in source 7.
Is the point of point date of the Ramah Misha Telach Milamod, because all of a sudden
that's Sif Bet of the Shulchan Aruch, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's not the Ramah.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so let's have a look over the page in source 7. V'hinei lahalacha, practically speaking, mashma is implied with divrei halot tamid b'tzorei zahav magen Avraham. The yesh litfotz kabet Yosef. So some people paskin like the Machaber against the Ramah that you don't actually have to get up. V'chein pasak hamagen giborim. Omnam, however, b'sefer ozarua posek harama. So the ozarua pasek harama. V'chein b'mishpasot zahav, right? That's the Pri Megadim. It's mishpasot zahav. Mitzadeh dehadinim haramah. So they agree with the Ramah that if it's not difficult for you, you should sit up for Shema at night. V'chein b'chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eiga mitzadeh lomar de lahachmir yesh lifsok kadat Rabbeinu Yonah ayin sham al ken therefore says the Bihalacha b'vaday yesh lahachmir lechatchila. So lechatchila one shouldn't lie down to recite Shema at night. We're talking about the 3 paragraphs. We're not talking about Kriyat Shema al-Hamita here. We're talking about the 3 paragraphs of Shema. For example, some have a Mariv or did an early Mariv and now wants to recite 3 paragraphs of Shema. They should not be lying down. They should ideally do it while they're still sitting up.
So just to be clear, though, we are not talking about Kriyat Shema al-Hamita.
We're talking here about the mitzvah of Uveshoch B'cha, of Kumecha, i.e. Shema at night and Shema in the morning, not Kriyat Shema al-Hamita, the 1 paragraph which we do. We're talking about somebody who has not yet recited 3 paragraphs of Shema, early Mariv, and the like. Right. So the question is, if I didn't early Mariv, can I just do 3 paragraphs at night? Al-Hamita. The answer is yes, but really, the Chatchila, you should be sitting up. You shouldn't, if you're lying down, it's machlok.
So I take that this report really doesn't apply to Kriyat Shema.
No, that's why it's called Al-Hamita. Literally. Well, not liyat, yeah, but yes. I mean, again, the Sanias thing, maybe but lying on one side or on one's back, but that's a different issue. Okay. But the Yalkut Yosef, surprise, doesn't accept the Ramah. He rules like Maran Bet Yosef, Kadar Koba Kodesh, right, as the Sfardi. And he says that Sfardim can be lying down for Kriyat Shema at night, as long as they're on their side. In source 8 says the Yalkut Yosef, Yachal Adam Likro Kriyat Shema, Ben Kshu Mahalach, Ben Kshu Omed or Yoshev. Avolo Prakdan, he says not lying on one's back or front, Shepanav Klapikarav face down, or Gabal Klapikarav face down or face up, but he does allow, like the Shulchan Aruch, like Sfardim, to read on one side. Avokorav hu shochev al tzido, you're allowed to read Shema on your side. So again, because the Sfardim follow the Shulchan Aruch against the Ramah. V'im hayabal basa harbeh, right, particularly large, ve'eni yachol hitapech al tzido and couldn't turn over, o shecholeh, right, somebody with mobility issues, somebody who's ill, not him at the tzido v'korah, it's enough just to turn a little bit and read.
Where do we get?
But again, why is the Yalkut Yosef passing this way? Because he's Faradi, so he follows the Shulchan Aruch against the Ramah. So the Bir Halacha says you should really, for Ashkenazim, should sit up. The Yalkut Yosef says for Sfardim that if they can lie on their side, and that's enough. And that's just in terms of saying Shema. So somebody who's daven early Mariv, if you're Ashkenazi, ideally should not lie down. Sfardi can lie on one side lechatchila. Yes, well, you can ask Peter. Go for it.
In Gemara, it talked about lying supine, face up. You can't say Shema. And somehow it doesn't mention about lying prone being forbidden.
Yeah, that comes in later.
And what's the origin of not doing it prone and not lying?
I think the same reason, which we're not going to go into.
Okay. All right.
Talmud Tzniut, Balteri, and the like. Okay. Fine. So let's proceed. What about people who like to move about in davening? So we said you shouldn't lie down at night and you shouldn't stand up in the morning because it looks like you're passing against, like Beit Shammai against Beit Hillel. And the halacha follows Beit Hillel. That it doesn't mean literally stand up and lie down, but it's just the time of standing up and lying down. So what about people who are like energetic or a little bit ADD or they like to move around during davening or any other reason? Are you allowed to stand up right before Shema at Shacharit? Are you allowed to sit down right before or lie down right before or put your head down or whatever, lean right before Shema at Mariv? So the Ben Ish Chai discusses this in source 9, right? Of Yosef Hayim, right, of Baghdad, right, lived 19th century. The Ben Ish Chai in Makubal, he says as follows: somebody wants to be machmir on themselves, la'amod kashehu yoshev, right, to stand when he's already sitting, so that he should recite Shema standing. We're talking about Shema in the morning now, right? Somebody who wants to stand up for Shema in the morning, Nikra Avarian, right? It's called a sinner, as we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. If he's doing it just to be machmir for Beit Hillel, but this is what he adds for Beit Shammai. Thank you. Aval, however, im oseken kedei lahavir hashena mutar. But if he's doing it for another reason, to wake himself up because he's falling asleep in shacharit, and he wants to keep himself awake, so he chooses to stand up right before Shema, that's allowed according to the Ben Ish Chai. But the Ben Ish Chai says, if the reason you're standing up is not out of chumrah, you want to be choshesh the opinion of Beit Shammai, but simply for an external reason, because you want to keep yourself alert and awake, that's why you choose to stand up, that would be allowed. Interesting that this is actually a machloket, as we're going to see as the Piskei Teshuvot now in source 10 summarizes, basically practically speaking, when one would be allowed to move around in Shema. Often, like, I don't know, like I always grew up in England, you sit, when you're told to sit, you stand when you're told to stand. Then I get to yeshiva in Israel, and like during like Kriyat Shema, during the whole way through davening, like, I don't know, it's like the kids are ADD, or like you get these, they're just fresh out of high school, and you got students walking up and down the Talmud, and they walk up and down during tefillah. I like to sit in my seat with my siddur, and I'm watching these Israelis, and they're like, you know, they're walking up and down, and it's like they can't just stay, and then they sit down, and then they stand up, and they move around. It's like a very different culture. But the Piskei Teshuvah discusses this. People who just like naturally need to be moving the whole time. But it's like clearly a cultural thing. Like I was told, you sit in your seat until the end of davening. But the people like walk. They must walk the aisles during, especially. Don't walk around. No, the Rambam and the yeshiva certainly don't. But you see it in Israeli shuls all the time, in little steeples. You see people who like walk up. They walk. It's a cultural thing. They walk in Israel. They can't stay still. They will walk up and down the aisles, and they're reciting Shema, and they're walking up and down, and they sit down. They stand up. The question is, are you allowed to do that? So the Piskei Teshuvah summarizes exactly the parameters of basically, I don't know if it's just Israeli society or more ADD, I don't know what it is, but let's see what he says here in the Piskei Teshuvot in source 10. He summarizes as follows. V'sikum halacha zo al pi Mishnah Berurah, to summarize the halacha based on the Mishnah Berurah, v'haposkim, and the poskim is, she'av she'ena mechuvan klal mishum shitat Beit Shammai, even if you're not actually trying to be choshesh, concerned for the opinion of Beit Shammai. Ella, rather, what are you doing by standing? Kadei la'orer kavanato, you just want to, you know, arouse your concentration. Or machmat kol siba acheret, or for any other reason you choose to stand. According to many poskim, ein lahatir, you're not allowed. You're not allowed just to stand for extra kavanah, according to this opinion. Aval, however, but if it's clear you're doing so for an external reason, for example, right? Right? What happened? Someone took your chair away, right? The option to sit was gone. Exactly, right? You get to Kriyat Shema, and I don't know what's happening, but Jim comes along and is cleaning up the chairs, and it pops it out, right? And you have to stand. Or Adam Shemitiv, and here goes to this Israeli culture I was talking about. Or Adam, a person, Shemitivo in his nature, Tamid Eino Bimnucha, can't just sit still, right? V'kam v'yoshev v'chozer, v'kam v'yoshev, right? Gets up and sits down and moves about. Bezeh inkpeda. About such a person, there's no concern. We're not makpid about such a person. Somebody who just by nature moves around, that's not considered an issue. And he goes further, based on the Ben Ish Chai, and says, "V'yesh matirim, those who allow gam ha'amida la'ayef u'mitnamnem." Based on the Ben Ish Chai that we just read, some people allow people to stand up, especially for Shema, even if just to make sure that to stop yourself being tired and falling asleep, kadesha you kalik robi ater kavana, so you can read with more kavana, right? So that's based on the Ben Ish Chai. But we saw that bit's a little bit for dispute. But says the Piskei Teshuvah, when it is clear you're standing for an external reason, not because you're being frum and you want to have more kavan, or you want to be choshesh the opinion of Beit Shammai, then it would be allowed. Or it's in your nature, like you move around more, then it's allowed. Okay. And he says there's certainly room to be makel if you don't stand up or lie down or sit down right before Shema, but in the paragraph before, like not immediately before, then there's even more reason to be lenient and allow it.
If you get up and you shove up, you can certainly stand.
Oh, that's for sure. But he's talking even in Ahava Rabbah, if you get up, then it would be allowed. So that's what he says here.
The preference is not to be sitting?
The preference is no. The preference is not to deliberately stand for ukumecha.
No, so as long as you're yoked with not deliberately standing.
Right, yeah. So he says what's not deliberately, because you naturally always move around, or because there's a clear reason why you stood up, because something fell on a chair. I don't know what it is.
The point is, in such a case, there is no problem staying.
Right, so yeah. So let's see what he says here. He says, if you stand not right as you get to Shema, but rather in the previous bracha. You haven't actually got to Shema yet, like the bracha before Avarabba. We found that the Gedolim of the previous generations had this minhag. And similarly, there are those who allow you to stand up for Shema and Shacharit if you read at least the first pasuk while you were sitting. Why? Because if you've done the first pasuk sitting, then obviously you're showing you're not doing it for the mitzvah because you sat down for the first pasuk, right? Sheshuv sha'ara parashiot, for the other parashiot, rashai likro kirtzono, you can read however you want and you can stand up. Kivan shekvar gilada atop pasuk rishon, because already shown in the first pasuk to look at Beit Shammai, right? That he's not ruling like Beit Shammai. Okay. So he summarizes halachot and says it's an external reason, or if it's in the previous parsha, then certainly it's okay. And if you've already sat down for the first pasuk, then you can want to stand for subsequent pasukim. That is okay. All right. Any questions? You look all good, yes? Yeah. What are you going to ask? So they can hear you. Yeah.
If you're not intending to follow the opinion of Beit Shammai, and you're just changing positions so that you can concentrate better or with more kavanah, so is that not allowed?
That was a machloka here. He answered and he said v'yesh matirim, and at the end that those who allow, and that was based on the Ben Ish Chai. But if you stand up in the paragraph before, then he says, then you sort of deal with the whole issue. But if you stand up in Ava Rabbah already, then it doesn't look like you're deliberately standing up for Shema. Okay. Interesting practical ramification, a little bit to do with kavana, but more to do with sort of standing and sitting. Traveling on a journey. So poskim talk about traveling by horse and cart, right? So let's discuss that. Or by boat. Mishnah Berurah discusses that in source 11. He says as follows. If you're davening on a journey, in source 11, v'yoshev b'karon or b'sfina, someone sitting in a carriage or on a boat, eino tzarich la'amod, doesn't have to stand, okay? Diachol lichaven hetev, okay? Because you can have kavana while sitting. I am b'sharei tshuva prikva gadim. Uverochev al behema, if you're riding an animal, yesh de'ot ben achronim v'nachon lahachmir. There's different views about whether
Have we lost our Maggid Shiur?
Okay.
Hello.
Sorry. Hello, I'm back.
He
Okay.
doesn't. He means that you don't. Not that.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, let's continue. Okay.
He
Yes, what's
means-
your question,
when
Peter?
he says la'amod, he doesn't mean la'amod in the sense of stand up. He means stop.
Yes.
Yes.
So
yes.
la'amod there means to stop. Sorry if I didn't clarify that. Correct. Okay. Beseda. Okay. So let's read on then. Okay.
If you
So
could
what
go
the
to-
nafkamina we discussed was a car, right? Because a car is more like an animal than riding on a carriage. So let's see that in the next.
But
The
you
next.
could-
The Piskei
if you-
Tshuva again brings it here in source
If
12
you were
over the
riding on a
page.
horse, you could stop. You could stay on the horse as long as you weren't
So
moving.
la'amod means to be stationary. Correct. Correct. Okay. So let's see the Piskei Tshuva over the page in source 12. Umaskanat hadvarim, right? So the question is, how do we compare a car? So the conclusion of matter, alpim metzius manenu, based on the reality of our times. Le'inyan nosim berechev, those who travel in a car. She'im yeshivatam amidatam nochav tucha mechashash nefila, right? If sitting or standing is better due to and safer, so they don't fall. Korim kadarkam, you should read in the proper way, which is safer, as you are. The hanahag atzmo, the driver himself, asur lo likrot kriyat shema. Should not read Kriyat Shema whilst driving. You can't concentrate to have both a safe journey and to fulfill Shema properly. Right? Let's not even talk about people who cover their eyes for Shema whilst driving. Okay, let's not even go there. Okay. V'gam log is a very bad idea. You're being makabel amachot shemayim at the same time making fun of God's world by driving with your eyes shut. Okay. V'gam log garamim riza v'asiyat malacha, for sure it's no worse, on the other hand, than hinting or doing malacha ha'asura k'shekara kriyat shema, than doing other things when you're reading Shema. You're literally driving a car. Okay, Chazal talk about not doing this while you're making signs language while you're reciting Shema, let alone driving a car. Okay, the im over is man kriyat Shema, and if time of kriyat Shema is passing, then what do? You have to park the car outside the derech on the side, for the very least for the first paragraph. In other words, you should not be reciting Shema whilst driving. Besides, for the safety issue, the distractions are numerous, and if you can't, be meramez, we're going to see that in a moment. You can't do actions to hint to people certainly you shouldn't be driving a car whilst reciting Shema. Yalkut Yosef says similarly as well, but he says that a passenger would be allowed. So we'll just skip to the end of source 13. So he says a passenger can, but the end of source 13, but the driver, right? You should park on the side. Won't read it all because he says the same thing. But this really does lead us on to the question of being busy with other things while one is reciting Shema, which is going to be the next little section we look at, motioning whilst reciting Shema. So this is based on the Gemara. We're going all through Shas. We did Brachot a lot, and now we're going to do Yoma. Okay, we're going through all different sugyot tonight. The Gemara in Yoma gives very clear instructions about what one should not be doing whilst reciting Shema, and you'll see how much kal v'chomer one shouldn't be driving a car. Because let's see what the Gemara forbids doing whilst reciting Shema in source 14. In the Gemara in Yoma Daf Yud Tet. So the Gemara there relates to us that Rav did some sort of simanim, some sort of gesture with his hands to somebody, sign language, whilst reciting Shema. And the Gemara says, how could he do this? Look at source 14 in Yoma. Is such an interruption allowed to do signs during Shema? Surely Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta said, Shema, somebody who's reading Shema, lo yirmoz be'einav, shouldn't be making any sort of signs with his eyes. Right? You don't be winking or blinking at somebody, or giving someone staring or evils or whatever. You shouldn't be mouthing things or making funny gestures with your mouth. You should not be pointing during recital of Shema to tell somebody something. Tanya, we learn in a Braita. Rabbi Elazar Chisma said, "Hakaret Shema marmaz be'einav." Somebody who reads Shema is hinting with their eyes, making gestures with one's mouth, with one's lips. Over the page, umarebetz ba'o, and doing gestures with one's fingers. Allah hakatuv omer, about such a person, the Torah says, or the Tanakh says, v'lo oti karata Yaakov. You did not call out to me, O Yaakov. In other words, it's as if you have not recited Shema to Hashem. Somebody is busy doing other gestures, even if they're not audible, but doing hand gestures, eyes, mouth, whatever it is, it's as if you haven't recited Shema. So how could Rav do it? So the Gemara says, Lo kasha, it's not difficult. Haba perek rishon, haba perek sheni. When is it you're not allowed to do gestures? Only in the first perek. In the second perek, you're allowed to do gestures. Obviously, you're not allowed to talk, but hand gestures and things might be allowed. The Gemara ends off with a nice little paragraph there and says, Tanu Rabbanan, rabbis told us, for dibarta bam, right? Which literally means you shall speak of them. But Chazal make the following drasha. Bam velo b'tfilah. You can speak, meaning you can do gestures during them, during Shema, velo b'tfilah, but not during the Amida. No gestures are allowed in the Amida whatsoever. Not in the second bracha, not in the third bracha, right? Only in the second paragraph of Shema. For dibarta bam, during them, says the Gemara, bam, during Shema, yesh lecha reshut ledaber, you can indicate. Velo b'dvarim acherim, but not with other matters. Rabbi Acha says, "V'dibarta bam oseh otan keva v'alta samara." He understands v'dibarta bam totally differently, but it means you've got to make it keva to do Shema and not temporary. Either way, what do we see from here though? The Gemara distinguishes between the first and second paragraphs of Shema. The first, you can't do any even hand gestures, eye gestures, no body language. You've got to concentrate on Shema, and only in the second paragraph is one allowed to gesture.
Tell me the second line.
Why? What's the difference between the first and second?
Well, it's not a hefsek for a start.
Sorry?
It's not a hefsek for a start.
But it's not hefsek in the first, so why do you need to, why is it different in the first versus the second?
I guess the first is more the principle.
So let's have a look at Rashi on that Gemara here.
Before you go,
go for it.
Paragraph. Why does Gemara say Dibarta bam? Bam yesh lecha reshut ledaber. Ledaber is very clearly to speak.
It's a drosh that's going on the word Dibarta. It's a drasha, but it doesn't mean literally dibur. It's a drashan, and the Gemara already ends there to say it's not literally what it means. But yeah, okay, it's good point. But that's a Gemara which is a drash rather than it's Musa, rather than a literal drasha of the psukim. Look here at Rashi though. Rashi says why the first parak can't you make any sort of hand motions. Parak Rishon says Rashi in source 15. Sarich bo kavana. You have to have kavana. Shene'emar bo because it says v'hayu advarim ha'ele al right al levavecha on your heart. And that's said specifically in the first paragraph, and that requires extra concentration. The Shulchan Aruch rules this way, like this Gemara, to distinguish between the first versus second paragraph. So let's see that inside. Hakor in source 16, Shulchan Aruch rules. Hakore kriyat shema. One is reading Kriyat Shema. Lo yimroz be'einav should not make allusions to one's eyes. V'lo yikros b'spatav, movements of one's lips. V'lo yabet spatav shouldn't make indications or hints with one's fingers or hands. But parsha rishona in the first paragraph, shahu ikar kabbalat al machut shemai, because that's the primary kabbalat al machut shemai. Because it looks like, again, borrowing from the end of the Gemara, that it looks like you're just not reading properly, right? And it says with debarta bam. Right, speak of them with arshinan asel tam keva. So that's based on the last paragraph of the Gemara. But either way, the Shulchan Aruch rules like the Gemara that first paragraph there could be no hand gestures whatsoever. But it seems that the second and third paragraphs it would be allowed. Piskei Teshuvot talks about that even in the first paragraph, when we said you're not allowed to do actions and hand motions and things, that's only just for things which are not related. But if it's necessary to remove something in your way for the purpose of tefillah, then it will be permitted to do so even during the first paragraph. So to blow one's nose, classic example, right? Or to something your siddur fell on the floor, that you'd be allowed to do it even in the first paragraph. And the Piskei Teshuvah brings this explicitly in source 17, that the prohibition to do hand actions is only for things which aren't related to tefillah or necessary to tefillah right now. So source 17 says the Piskei Teshuvah, Omnam, however, im ha'isuk, if being the gesturing or being busy, or miza, or the motioning, the tzorech siluk machshavot tordot, right, is to remove a distraction from yourself, like there's something distracting you, you want to move out of the way. Ein bezeh chashash. There's no such issue. There's no issue with doing that. There's no such concern. It could go on such as lahashtik rash anashim. If you want to go to people, shh, right, like put your finger to your lips because they're bothering you, that they're talking through Shema, you're allowed to do that even in the first paragraph. Or to do it to a kid, right, who's crying. L'kanecha, to wipe one's nose, and agef as they are, whatever, to wipe sweat off one's brow. L'harim sidur, right, to pick up one's siddur, or talito, shenishbatel, one's talit which fell down. U'sha'ar dvarim hatordim, anything else which is a distraction or bother. Ach yizaheh lo lahamshich hakriya be'et ha'isuk. Okay, but you shouldn't actually read while you're doing this. So go like this, shh, and then carry on reading, right? That's his point. Okay, but you're only allowed to do it, which is something which is necessary to remove a distraction. Then you could do that even in the first paragraph. Now,
Sorry, I noticed the first and the second paragraph. The third paragraph is in the
third kal v'chomer, or the more so. Third is
what?
That you're allowed to. If you're allowed to do it in the second paragraph, or the more so in the third paragraph. Okay. The Rambam though doesn't he doesn't distinguish between the first paragraph and the other paragraphs. And the question is why? Because the Gemara seemed to be quite explicit, right? That there's a difference between the first and second paragraph. So, but if we look at the Rambam here in source 18, Hakorei kriyat shema, lo yirmaz be'einav, v'lo yikros b'spatav, v'lo yabet tzbotav. And he doesn't, throughout, I'm not going to read it all inside, but he doesn't say that he's only talking about the first paragraph. He just says Hakorei kriyat shema. Now, this seems to go against the Gemara and Yoma. The Gemara and Yoma clearly distinguish that you're allowed to do hand motions during the second paragraph. So why does the Rambam not distinguish between the first and the other paragraphs? That's the question which is asked on the Rambam. So bringing the Parish of Rabbeinu Manoach, and he says as follows. Let's flip down to the next source. He answers as follows. He gives two answers, he suggests, for the Rambam in source 19. Says Rabbeinu Manoach, Perek Kamadu Yoma, in the first paragraph of Yoma, the distinguish between the first and second paragraph. Mashma, which implies the perek shein in the second perek, mutter lirmos, you're allowed to make hand gestures. So why does the Rambam not explain that this halacha is only by the first paragraph? The Efsha answers Rabbeinu Manoach, it's possible, shelo ratzah harav legalot, kadei shelo yizalzulu b'kriyata. It's fascinating. What's answer number one? Maybe the Rambam didn't want to reveal this to the masses. He doesn't want people knowing, great, I can make hand gestures during Shema, right? During the second paragraph. He doesn't want to be mazalzel, right? To make a mockery of it. You don't have to give everyone every heter, right? It's important not to keep some cards close to your chest. So maybe the Rambam didn't want to publicly say you're allowed to do hand gestures during the second paragraph of Shema. That's answer number one. But he gives a second answer, more fundamentally, and he says, Inami, alternatively, Perek Sheni, Magunehu de lo have, aval isura ikar. So he says it's not maguneh, it's not inappropriate in the second paragraph, but it's still isura ikar, it's still prohibited. It's still an isur, it's still a prohibition. So he says the Gemara says it's not maguneh, how is it maguneh in the second paragraph, but it's still not allowed. Those are the two suggestions he gives. Really it is allowed, and the Rambam concedes that he just didn't want to publicize it to the masses. You don't tell people, can you imagine, nothing's, in a shul, certainly here, anywhere, you put up a sign which said, you may now talk, or you may now do hand gestures. It's not good, it's not good policy for the community to tell them when they may talk. It's best, that they work out on their own. But answer number two is fundamental. It says, no, it's still usur. It's just less disgraceful than if one were to do things during the first paragraph. Those are the two answers Rabbeinu Manoach suggests as to why the Rambam doesn't explicitly distinguish between the first and second paragraphs of Shema. Good, okay. So let's go on then. There's a few interesting exceptions though, as to when basically what would be considered okay, even if we are concerned, like the Rambam, that you're not allowed to do actions even in the second paragraph, and it's just not maguneh, but it's still prohibited. So anything which is l'tzorech mitzvah, the Al Kut Yosef rules here in source 20 is allowed throughout Kriyat Shema, in the second paragraph, not in the first. So he agrees here in source 20, Yalkut Yosef, he summarizes as follows. So let's look 20 in Chet. Says Yalkut Yosef, V'yesh machmirim, there are those who are particular, but machmir b'chol zeh gava parsha shnia, because based on that Rambam, the Rambam did not differentiate, right? And therefore, says Yalkut Yosef, there are those who are machmir also in the second paragraph. V'al kol panim, but nonetheless, l'dvar mitzvah for a dvar mitzvah, l'kulei alma mutar yimras b'parsha shnia. Everyone agrees you're allowed to do in the second paragraph. And I'm very grateful for this because it helps me out. Because of the example we're going to see. He brings the example of what happens if the community is waiting for the rabbi to finish Shema. So he rules that the rabbi is allowed to, during the second paragraph of Shema, go or pretend don't wait for me, go on, right? Don't wait for the rabbi to finish Shema, and you're allowed to indicate. So even if you're machmir for the Rambam, still you're allowed to indicate because it's l'tzorach mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? Tircha de tzibura, not to bother the whole community that they have to wait for you. So that he allows you to do in the second paragraph. So even if you're machmir for the Rambam, not to make any hand motions for a tzorach mitzvah, and he includes this, like the rabbi telling the community, go on, don't tell the chazan, go, don't wait for me. You're allowed to do that in the second paragraph, even if you're choshesh for the Rambam. So he says here, tet. If the chazan is waiting for the rabbi in the community to finish Kriyat Shema, and the rabbi is still in the first parasha, you shouldn't go like this to the tzibur that you can go on. But in the second paragraph, you're allowed to do hand motions to tell the chazan to go on. To Torah chatzibur, because holding back the community while they wait for you. Chashiv kidvar mitzvah, right? Good mussar, right? Torah chatzibur is like a mitzvah. Shemutar limros be'etzva b'harsha shneya. You can, in the second paragraph, you can indicate that they don't have to wait for you and you can go on. For top, but it's good. Sheyafsik ben pasuklepasuk. Better when do you do this? In between psukim, not in the middle of a pasuk, but in between psukim. Kedei lirmos. That's when one should do it. If it's in the third paragraph, even more meikul, because that answers your question, Harry, right? You can hint to the chazan, you can indicate him to go on, even in the middle of the pasuk, right? So we're even more meikul with the third paragraph. Okay. And and he brings here a little bit more, but he says Me'ikar Hadin, even though the Rambam says his halachot seem to imply according to Rambam, even with the second paragraph, nonetheless he ends off there. That's the end of Herachet, which is the last sentence. Nonetheless, Da Maran b'Shulchan Aruch, according to Shulchan Aruch, Yesh lechalek ben parsha Rishon l'shar parshiot. So he also concludes there in the Ha'ara, in the footnote there, that ultimately, even if the Rambams didn't differentiate, the Shulchan Aruch didn't rule like the Rambam. Right, the Shulchan Aruch said that these limitations are only in the first, but in the second one you can indicate as much as you like with your hands, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch had ruled, and therefore one who wants to be makel and do a hand actions into second paragraph has what to rely on, like the Shulchan Aruch, even if the Rambam didn't pass on that way. Okay, let's do a little bit more because I would like just to make a bit more ground before the end. Okay, so what about I walk into shul, or there's a minyan going on, or whatever it is, and they're up to Shema, or I'm still in Pesukei Zimra because I came late, whatever it is. Should I join in with them at least for the first pasuk? For Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad.
What page are you on?
Did I skip?
Oh, you are on 202.
I'm on 202. I didn't skip. Whoops. I wasn't. Yeah, I was on the right page. Okay, 202. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemaim. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at now. I walk into shul and they're reciting Shema. Do I join in with them? So the Rosh says, based on the Bahag in source 21, Mikan Katav Bal Halachat Gedolot. Writes the Bahag. Kara Kriyat Shema, one who read Shema, Uvala Beta Knesset, came to shul. He's already read Shema. Umetzaam Shekorin Kriyat Shema, but he finds that they are in Shema. Kore Pasuk Rishon Imahem. The Rosh, quoting the Bahag, says, if the entire community are reciting Shema, you should stop and you should recite Shema with them, with Makabal Ol Malchut Shemaim all together. And that's what he rules.
And where you want.
So the Tzurba Hadeshen qualifies that psak of the Bahag in the next source. The Tzurba Hadeshen writes what? That is only if you're in a place where you're allowed to stop. He says here, Yireh would seem, in source 22, Imhu Omer Bebroka or Kriyat Shema, if you're in the middle of the brachot, Ein lo lahafsik klal. You should not make a hefsek if you're in the middle of Kriyat Shema. Let's say you're a bracha behind, you should not make a hefsek there. But Amar pasuk Rishon and say the first pasuk. Because the Rosh wrote in the name of the Bahag, Misha Bala Beit Knesset, one who comes to shul, Umatzat Tzibur Koren Shema, and the people are reading Shema. Kore pasuk Rishon Imahem. You should read the first pasuk. Hainu, that is what? Kashu Batal Meklum, when you're not already in the middle of anything, you're not doing anything. Kedamash Metoch Lishono. Aval, however, kashehu osek b'shar divrei brachot b'shevach lo. But if you're already in the middle of davening elsewhere, you should not join in, and that's what the Tzurba Hadeshen rules. So what do you do?
Pasuk is tucked in the first pasuk. We only include
only the first pasuk, but you're not, and you're only allowed to do that if you're not in the middle of davening. If you're in the middle of davening, you should not do it.
What is middle of davening?
In anywhere, in barak, meaning anywhere you're not allowed to make a hefsek. So not in Berachos of Kriyat Shema. We're going to see in a minute. There's a machloket. Sorry. Not till after Shmona Esrei, but even from Baruch She'amar, we'll see there's a machloket. Between Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, there's a machloket, if you're allowed to even join in the first pasuk. And so what does he suggest to do? He says, therefore it seems that Baruch She'amar Yishtabach, even between Baruch She'amar and Yishtabach, to answer your question, Ein lo lahafsik, you should not make a hefsek kedelik krot pasuk rishonim sibah. You should not read the first pasuk, even if you're in Pesukei Zimra. Mishum de'eno yoshevu vatel, because you're not in the middle. You're not doing nothing. You're in the middle of something. Mekam. Nonetheless, what did he see people do? What did the Medaktakim do? The particular people do? They would pretend to join in, because if they can't interrupt because they're in the middle of something else, they would cover their eyes. What would they do? And they would go and make the noise, right? Like they're doing the first pasuk. If they were in the middle of Kriyat Shema, they would also close their eyes like everyone else, even though they're not actually up to the Shema. They would make the nigun, right? They make the tune, the Shema, like whatever they're up to in the Shema. Whatever words they were up to anyway at that point. But nigun had tzibur b'pasuk rishon with everyone else. So it would be seen as if they were joining in with them. And the Shulchan Aruch rules like that. If we just go over the page, source top of 23, the next page, top of page 203, source 23, the Shulchan Aruch rules this way. Let's see it inside. Kara Kriyat Shema, if you're reading Shema, v'nichnas Beit HaKnesset, you've already read Shema, and you walk into shul. U'matzat tzibur shekorin Kriyat Shema, they're reading it there. Tzarich likrot imahem pasuk rishon. You should read the first pasuk. Okay. Skip down to the next paragraph. V'hu hadin, and similarly, imhu b'Beit HaKnesset v'omer divrei tachanunim pasukim b'makom sherashai lifsok. You should also join in the first pasuk if you're in a piece of davening, like you're in tachanun or whatever it is, or after davening, where you're allowed to join in. Abal, however, imhu asuk b'makom she'eino rashai lifsok. If you're at a place where you're not allowed to interrupt, could go on such as Baruch She'amar ve'elach. So if you're from Baruch She'amar onwards, lo yafsik, you're not allowed to interrupt even for the first pasuk. Ela rather, Yomar hatevot shu omer b'shasha tzibur omrim pasuk rishon. Just say the words that you're saying where you're actually up to now. But nigun hatzibur, like with the dirge, so everyone thinks you're actually reciting Shema. She'en nireh ki'ilu koreh imahem. It would look as if you are reading with them. So Shulchan Aruch says that if you're already past Baruch She'amar, until you're after Amida, you can't interrupt even for the first pasuk. You just pretend that you're joining in, you cover your eyes, and you, whatever word you're up to, you do in the dirge with everyone. So it doesn't look disrespectful that you're not joining in Kriyat Shema with everyone.
But isn't that the equivalent of making hand gestures and things in the middle of your prayers?
Yes, but you're not in Shema. That's okay.
So you're allowed to do it at other parts of your prayer when
Yes.
you're in the middle of
And
a place where you shouldn't
certainly
be.
this is L'tzorech mitzvah, because this is joining into the Kabbalat Al Malchut Shemaim of the entire community. This is the point where the rest of the minyan are all accepting the kingship of God on themselves. So you can't physically interrupt. Doesn't mean you think, you've got your mind on your dinner or your breakfast, I suppose, if it's in the morning, but still, you stop and you acknowledge that the tzibur I am part of right now is accepting the yoke of heaven upon themselves. So that's how I see it. And that's what he rules. He says if you're not in davening at all, he just rules here that it's best that you can say all of Shema with them, but you're only actually chayav in the first pasuk. And that's somebody who's not. We got Mariv imminently, so I'll just end off with, in source 24, the Mishnah Berurah disagrees. He says there are those that say that in Pesukei Dezimra, from Baruch She'amar onwards, you're allowed to interrupt for the first pasuk. So the Mishnah Berurah disagrees, and this is why there's a machloket in the poskim, because the Shulchan Aruch says you're not allowed to interrupt from Baruch She'amar. That was based on the Trumat HaDeshen. But the Mishnah Berurah here in source 24, just in the bold there, says, but Birkat Baruch She'amar Yishtabach and Pesukei Dezimra, you're allowed to for the first pasuk, but not in Kriyat Shema. But he allows you to interrupt because, again, Baruch She'amar, we've seen previously, Pesukei Dezimra is a lower level of hefsek, and therefore he allows it
Yes,
there.
yes.
We've got to go to Mariv now. Feel free to send me private questions on WhatsApp if there are follow-ups or a voice note, and Blined, I'll get back to you. Unfortunately, we won't be on next week as I'm away, but Bezrat Hashem, we're on in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Time. Take care.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach to you all. Hold on.